It's crazy to think that Five Nights at Freddy's, a series about killer animatronics, is at its core a ghost story. The animatronics are haunted by children and possibly former workers if popular theories are accurate. And even in one rare case, someone became something of an undead zombie, possessing what is little more than a rotten corpse. We see the residuals of hauntings in possessed arcade cabinets and animatronics infused with the memories of horrific events. But in practice, we don't see many ghosts. No white sheets with black hole eyes floating around yelling boo at unfortunate late-night workers. But there was one time when Fnaf got very close, introducing a band of animatronics who weren't robots at all, but mere apparitions of animatronics from the past in a blaze that was yet to come. These were the aptly named Phantoms. Also known as the Phantom Animatronics, though we will soon learn why that moniker is a little misleading, the Phantoms are a major threat in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, despite the fact that they really aren't much of a threat at all. See, FNAF 3 shook up the formula in an unexpected way. Instead of surviving the night against haunted animatronics who were former victims of a deranged madman, you are confronted by the madman himself, trapped in his own suit, old and forgotten and rotten, shambling around in a moldy bunny costume. Now he, or it, only goes as Springtrap, and he is the result of what happens when you get too comfortable in a Springlock suit. The game takes place at Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction made tastelessly in an homage to the numerous dead and missing, found and not found in Freddy's. It is your goal to mislead him throughout the nights to keep him from getting to you and, perhaps, keep him from escaping this low-budget horror-themed prison. But having a singular animatronic doesn't make for a very difficult experience. How fast can that rabbit stagger around? So, to remedy this, and possibly because Springtrap's history follows at his heels haunting even him, the Phantom Animatronics intrude and become your problem. The Phantom Animatronics are a band of familiar faces returning from FNAF 1 and 2, though instead of being true animatronic threats, they are aggressive apparitions there to distract you while the real threat, Springtrap, slowly moves his way towards you. Them not being real animatronics is pretty obvious though, as many of them, including Freddy, Foxy, and Balloon Boy, have their remains sitting around the building. They cannot kill you, but that does not mean that they will not end your run if you're not careful to learn their patterns, evade, and manage them. Let's cover the Phantoms right now, starting with Phantom Freddy. Phantom Freddy is based off of a mix of Withered Freddy, with the same face shape, and FNAF 2's version of Golden Freddy, with the missing ear and loose wiring. Though instead of brown or yellow, his body is more so a sort of green, with black streaks down his fur that seem to be ash or burn marks, something shared between all of the Phantoms, along with his white dot eyes. Though in some alternate merch, Freddy had a more brown complexion. Phantom Freddy will come shuffling by the window, and you have to look at the monitor until he moves on. If you don't, he'll duck down, assumedly scuttle into the office, and then jump scare you. Also, apparently, if you stare at Springtrap when he's at the doors or windows without pulling up the monitor screen, Phantom Freddy will jump you. Like I said, the Phantoms cannot kill you. They will just affect the office, such as disabling the ventilation, disabling the audio, but more importantly, setting you up for Springtrap to come in and finish the job. In this situation specifically, Springtrap's already on the cusp of coming into the room. Phantom Freddy has no lines. In FNAF World, his tagline is, "Just taking a stroll," referencing his little jaunt outside the window. And compared to the two Freddys before him, there's surprisingly not much to say about him beyond that. Something that will come up again, and again, and again. Next is Phantom Foxy. Phantom Foxy resembles his FNAF 2 build, even with the degloved ear. He's even missing his right arm, which can be found in the box of remains in the office. He has the dark ash and burn stains all over his body. He has that greenish aura too, but his main body is still orange, just hidden beneath the blackened smears. Phantom Foxy will show up in the office unexpectedly, and you have to raise the monitor screen to make him go away. Otherwise, he'll lunge, like Foxy is known to do, and jump scare you. Apparently in the mobile game, Phantom Foxy will just pop up and jump scare you when you lower the monitor, and there's nothing you can do about him. His Fnaf World tagline is, "Because you can never have too much Foxy," perfectly summing up his lack of distinct character. He is just another Foxy. Then there's Phantom Chica. Phantom Chica is in her FNAF 1 design, save that she's missing her cupcake and the black streaked body with the greenish hue, similar to the other Phantoms. However, due to this design choice on her specifically, Chica has gotten a bit of a reputation, and the fond nickname of Watermelon Chica, something so prevalent that it actually was referenced in her loading page in FNAF World. And I quote, "Stop calling me a watermelon." In an ironic twist of fate, Withered Chica is actually the Phantom with the most to talk about because of this Watermelon Chica thing. Phantom Chica appears on an arcade cabinet on camera 7, and if you see her and lower the monitor, she will jump scare you. If you click onto a different camera, she will not. It's interesting that she has a direct connection to the arcade cabinet, with what we see of the reoccurring arcade cabinet hints throughout the series, but there's not really any direct lore connection here. In fact, the only reason I bring this up is because I'm struggling to find points to have her stand out. Watermelon Chica is a less than complex character. Now we have Phantom Balloon Boy. His body is almost pitch black with soot and ash. He's missing his balloons and sign, and now he just stares with large, empty black eyes with tiny lights for pupils. Balloon Boy attacks by randomly appearing on one of the cameras, with him having a few cameras that he can appear on, specifically, and I think 1, 7, 9, and 10. And you have to look to another camera quickly. If you lower the screen, he'll be waiting for you on the other side, in the office, and jump you. And Phantom Balloon Boy is the one Phantom who truly lives up to his name. During his jump scare, his face morphs. His eyes get even wider and his jaw stretches open, pulling it into an elongated, gaping grin. It is very unsettling, and he is the only Phantom who has something like this happen to him in his jump scares. Creepy. Phantom Balloon Boy's tagline in FNAF World is, "Because reasons." I think that's a fitting answer to why he is the one to look so disturbing. Also, there is Phantom Mangle, somewhat of an enigma due to most of its body being obscured, but it seems to be yet another animatronic who looks the same save the white eyes and the greenish charred body. This is confirmed in Help Wanted. Phantom Mangle will appear on camera 4, and after you spot it, it will sneak up to peek in the office window, making a noise like radio chatter as it does. It'll hang out for a while before eventually leaving, without a jump scare. Now, back when this game came out, it was believed that there were messages hidden in Mangle's static, like as previously believed in FNAF 2, but in both cases this wasn't true. Sort of like how Springtrap's groans sort of sounded like they might be words, but they weren't. Funny enough, but in FNAF World, Phantom Mangle apparently has 2 separate character screens, one with "because he needed to be weirder," and the other with "because she needed to be weirder," playing into that gender debate that circulated Mangle since their first appearance. There's not much else to say about Phantom Mangle. They blend in with the rest of their bandmates rather well. And finally, we have the Phantom Puppet. The Phantom Puppet is shockingly the puppet, except marred with smoke damage and ash, with glowing white pupils for eyes. Not too different from the puppet's original eyes, but just different enough to not match. Notably, due to how close the puppet is, you can see the burn marks in its paint, and significantly better detailed fire damage, streaking down its mask. The puppet appears on camera 8 sometimes, and if you see it, the Phantom Puppet will appear in your office, get up in your face, in a callback to the puppet looking into Freddy's eyes in FNAF 2, and makes dialing noises that sound almost like a dialing up computer. Just spitballing here, but maybe it's like it's facial recognition. It's trying to dial up to a police database, but it's not able to. But that's just an idea. Either way, it leaves after a little while, but it's just long enough to get in the way of everything you're doing, making you a sitting duck. Now, you might have noticed that I said the puppet appears on camera 8, not the Phantom Puppet, and that's very much the case. If you look closely at the floating figure in the hallway, that is clearly the real deal, and it doesn't seem to be an oversight, That would be, in fact, a huge oversight. To create a new puppet model, which it seems to be, and forget to make it a phantom puppet instead of a normal one, I don't think it was a mistake. Despite it triggering the hallucination, this is very interesting, because as you remember, many of the phantoms have their remains scattered around the haunted attraction, but the puppet is fully intact, and yet it still has a phantom haunting the place? Well, there may be a reason for this, and we'll get to that, but let me finish up the story with the phantoms. The Phantom Puppet's tagline in Fnaf World is, "Put it back in the box." In the game, it looks normal enough, like a recolored puppet, but when it attacks, it gets a giant head, as shown in the character loading screen. This being a reference to its giant head getting in your way while you're trying to fight off this horrible thing. Also, it's referred to as the Phantom Marionette in Fnaf World. In case you didn't know, the puppet is actually called the Marionette. But I don't usually call it by the Marionette. I don't know if we're on a first-name basis, it just doesn't seem polite. But that covers all of the Phantom Animatronics, and you might notice there's not a huge amount to say about them. They function differently, yes, but their designs are very similar. They don't have lines, and they just mostly exist to haunt the cameras and office. The phantoms are never truly explained in FNAF 3 either. They appear, they torment you, and then they're gone, like actual phantoms. But there is one noticeable thing that you probably noticed from the descriptions of them. The soot collected on their skin, the blackened streaks, they're burned, and not due to a past fire, as their visible remains are clean. Instead, the fire hasn't happened yet, but it comes soon after. At the end of the game, after your week working here, the place catches on fire and burns to the ground, as predicted by the ash burned into their ghostly suits. The phantoms disappear, and that is the end of them. Though they do return in a few side roles later on, let's cover those. And notably, because I'm going to bring this up later, the phantoms seem to be connected with Springtrap, but though Springtrap appears later on, appearing again in Pizzeria Simulator in a slightly different form, the phantoms do not. Like I said earlier with the character screens, all the phantoms appear as playable characters in FNAF World. They're some of the first characters you unlock and are a bit stronger than your starting parties. This is largely due to most of them having status-afflicting moves. Phantom Freddy himself has nothing but these. There's a lot of moves that poison the enemy, with every phantom except Freddy and the puppet having at least one. Oddly enough, Phantom Puppet, like the normal puppet, are up a tier in strength. I'm not sure if this is a constant, but I only found these two characters in the final section of the game. Yes, I found the endos before them. But I don't want to spend too much time off FNAF World, so moving on. 3 phantoms appear in Ultimate Custom Night. 4 if you count the Chica arcade cabinet cameo in the FNAF 3 office. And these are Phantom Freddy, Balloon Boy, and Mangle. None of which have new lines, but one of them has new mechanics. And that is Phantom Freddy. Phantom Freddy will slowly start to appear in the office, and you have to shine your flashlight to get him to go away. He'll continue showing up throughout the night, and if he appears all the way, he will jump scare you. Phantom BB and Mangle play pretty close to how they did in FNAF 3. BB will appear next to the monitor, and if you look at him for too long, you'll get jump scared and the screen will go dark for a little bit, but you won't actually lose. Phantom Mangle will also appear on the monitor, and if you look at him for too long, they'll appear in the office for a while. But this time, their noise isn't just a distraction, as some of the animatronics are noise sensitive. If this starts going off and Music Man is parked behind you, there's going to be a problem. Again, pretty small roles. They return again for Help Wanted, naturally, as there's a remake of FNAF 3 in it. They play mostly the same role with some minor exceptions. The major exceptions are the Phantom Puppet and Phantom Chica, who do not return in this remake. The only reason I can guess that the puppet doesn't appear is because it would be too difficult to have it stick to the face in VR. As for Chica, I guess there was just too much going on. It trims down the roster quite a bit. Another interesting thing to note is that Phantom Freddy's model isn't burned, it's downright shredded. It looks like he rolled himself around on a giant cheese grater before he showed up. It's a look, for sure. But there's not really much else to say here that I didn't already talk about with FNAF 3. And with that, we come to the end of their appearances. Save a cutout of Phantom Freddy and Curse of the Dreadbear's Corn Maze minigame, Phantom Foxy being in the coloring book, and quite a bit of merch. A relatively short list of appearances, but not uneventful. And with that out of the way, it's time to tackle the biggest mystery of the Phantoms. What are they? Well, there were two things after this game that gave hints on what they were going to be, and then one really big implication that sort of became the final word on them. Or at least a huge waving flag. First was the detail about poor ventilation in the horror attraction and the history of hallucinations in Fnaf. Both Fnaf 1 and 2 had hallucination cameos where on rare occasions the player would see ghostly apparitions that weren't there. Technically Fnaf 3 has them too, but I digress. Then with the poor ventilation added, some folks concocted the theory that perhaps the Phantoms themselves were simply hallucinations, explaining why they didn't kill the main character and only startled him, with him panting and gasping after the jump scares, and why there was a focus on this ventilation mechanic. Poor air quality could certainly lead to confusion, anxiety, and seeing things, and that the effects of the jump scares, ventilation, and such shutting down wasn't necessarily from them, but either happening coincidentally or being caused by the player, etc., etc. And then of course it was possible they were just ghosts. Then FNAF 4 came around with the Nightmare Animatronics, who were monstrous animatronics made to stalk and torment the main character of FNAF 4. Except they came with a catch, as revealed with the threatening Nightmare, who was translucent, given weight by the books, and then hinted in the Ultimate Custom Night lines,
"This time, there is more than an illusion to fear."
It became somewhat clear that the Nightmare animatronics weren't what they seemed, but illusions. Possibly through illusion discs, a currently book-exclusive technology used mostly by William Afton to disguise animatronics with. The Nightmare's counterparts in the books, the twisted ones, use the illusion discs to turn from normal animatronics to sharp-teethed, long-clawed monsters, and they do look a lot like the Nightmares. I go into this further in the Nightmares video, but the long and short of it was that there were illusions and hallucinations going on, and they were controlled by Afton himself. I think it was around this time that the theory that there was hallucinatory gas first popped up. But shockingly, it wasn't until Tales from the Pizzaplex, a book of short stories, years later, that the fear gas concept was finally brought to life. In the story Didophobia, a boy named Rory is living an odd life of cycles. Get food from the fridge, mom's in the shower, play with toys, go to sleep on time, stay in bed, don't let the nightmares in. This cycle is disrupted when a tube gets pulled loose and the flow of gas to his room is halted, leading Rory to realize that his whole life is a lie. He isn't a little boy anymore. Mom's not there. He is instead being contained in a fake house underneath Circus Baby's rentals, where he is kept in a constant illusion by this gas. The story even goes so far as to imply that he is no longer even being monitored anymore, as the voice who convinces him to stay, who is very clearly presented to be William Afton, is just a voice on a tape. Totally automated. And with this, the fear gas became an established thing. And with the fear gas now an established thing, the pieces seem to have finally come together, and while not confirmed, it seems very possible that the Phantoms were just hallucinations, if not caused by Springtrap's rank odor, since they arrived with him, or bad ductwork, then possibly by this strange fear gas. And I would like to clarify that I mean as of now. I don't necessarily think that this was the plan from the beginning, being as FNAF 3 and 4 were both supposed to be the final chapters for a while, or at least FNAF 4 definitely was, but I do think this could be the idea currently. This would seem like a stretch, except that there was plenty of evidence that this was the case. Think about it. The harmless jump scares, animatronics being there despite them being disassembled, the various cast of characters, not even lining up with the missing children incident as Balloon Boy and Mangle are there instead of Bonnie and another Freddy. The biggest piece of evidence is save the extremely poor air quality. In fact, even if the building doesn't have great ductwork, is it supposed to be airtight? Why do we have to focus so much time on pumping air through? Or are we balancing oxygen with something else? But the biggest piece of evidence is that shot of the puppet, because we know later on that the puppet survives this encounter and becomes part of Lefty, so the phantom puppet is not the ghostly remains of the puppet unless it started to reproduce by budding. There's something else hanging out in the ventilation and is causing us to see figments of animatronics whose bodies litter the building. Now, the story what we found in Fazbear's Frights does imply that Springtrap does create or control the Phantoms, but considering that William Afton was the one assumedly using the fear gas and the illusion discs, being behind the Twisted Ones and the nightmares, I think that still supports this idea. And since the story also suggests that the Phantoms are burned because the main character is dealing with his tragic backstory involving his dead parents who died in a house fire that he may or may not have started, I'm doing something here. Let me just roll with it. So you might be wondering, why would this random horror attraction even have fear gas? And I think the answer actually comes with a better question. How on earth did this random horror attraction get the okay to use Freddy's name and draw attention to the many rumors at Freddy's? Well, we know that Fazbear Entertainment has been around for a very long time. They've been quick with their lawyers and careful with their image. And most importantly, we know they ran a campaign to salvage Freddy's reputation by poking fun at those old rumors, brushing them off and capitalizing on them at the same time. While it's never stated, Fazbear's Fright matches Fazbear Entertainment's plans perfectly. It introduces the stories of the past as just that, ghost stories to poke fun of and make profit from, thereby blending the lines between reality and rumor. And they were able to use the names without any copyright dispute. Since this takes place before Help Wanted, the VR games, and the Pizzaplex, it is very possible that Fazbear Entertainment was behind Fazbear's Fright and using it to test the waters on their new strategy to cover up Freddy's dirty past. But why would they use fear gas? Well, because they're Fazbear Entertainment. They do stupid stuff all the time. Risky stuff, expensive stuff, untested stuff. If they heard that there was some sort of old gas canister sitting around that had been salvaged out of Afton's old hangout and that they supposedly caused fear, they would use it in a heartbeat for no particular reason. It doesn't make sense, but if you think about it, it really does fit their vibe. The evidence is light, but very plausible. But there's still one mystery. If these are hallucinations, why do they look charred and burned when the fire hasn't happened yet? Assuming that there wasn't a fire we didn't know about before this. Even if they are haunted by something, it doesn't quite make sense that they would project themselves as burned anyways. So why is that? Why are they burned? I don't think it was a supernatural premonition of what was to be. When it comes to fear gas and illusion discs, part of both involves the person affected by it sort of filling in the gaps of what they're seeing. There's some manipulation, but the person's perception influences what they see, which is why in Fnaf 4, the nightmare animatronics are clearly influenced by the traumatic bite, with large teeth, multiple mouths, and Fredbear himself with blood around his gums. I think the Phantoms were a reflection of the upcoming fire, but not due to some divine prediction. See, the Fazbear Fright fire is very suspicious. Phone Dude might warn about how dangerous the building might be, but the timing of everything, mixed with Springtrap's appearance, mixed with the fact that he was later burned in another fire under the direct intention to kill him once and for all, it seems very likely that the Fazbear's Fright fire was arson, someone trying to take out Springtrap. And if the character we play as was planning to burn down this attraction, then they might have those hallucinations of a fire that hasn't happened yet. They would already know it's coming. So who do we play as? Well, we don't know. Could be anybody. But the likely candidates are Michael Afton and Henry Emily, Afton's son and former business partner, respectively. They both have things that weigh in their favor. Michael says after his scooping that he's going to find William, and we are shown a cutscene of Springtrap at Fazbear's Fright after it burns, which could directly connect him to the incident. Plus, Michael was said to be alive, living in the shadows, no doubt watching Freddy's. Odds are him appearing at Fazbear's Fright a day before Springtrap rolled in wasn't a coincidence, as it likely took a few days of scouring Freddy's, breaking down the walls, and finding Springtrap before he got into the pizzeria. Mike also has worked as a security guard previously. The only thing that might work against this is that Springtrap scene, where he is shown after the fire. It could be saying that Michael was going after Afton after the fire broke out, and he just saw him in the newspaper or something. That is also possible. As for Henry, burning William to a second death matches his eventual plan in Pizzeria Simulator, and it failing here could be why he ups the ante so much in that game. He tried it this way, it didn't work, so he tried it with a little extra insurance. He would also be aware of Freddy's, have reason to pay attention, especially with his daughter, the puppet, spotted inside. This could have even been where he captured the puppet using Lefty. It all matches up. The only detraction being that he doesn't mention a previous attempt in Pizzeria Simulator. On the flip side, he could have seen Mike's efforts to burn William, or just the fire in general, and was given the idea for his own animatronic oven from it. Really, it's a little too close to tell. I guess I'd lean more towards Mike, but it could have very well been Henry. But either one of them being here could have hallucinated these phantoms. Both would have been familiar with them, and both would have had the plan to start the fire, creating the perfect environment for seeing these guys. I mean, there is always the chance that they were indeed simply ghosts and they were projecting the coming future, but I think in the story currently the hallucination option is much more likely. But that doesn't detract from the importance of the Phantom Animatronics. Maybe they weren't real, but they were real enough to get you killed when going up against the big bad himself. And though their personalities were limited and their screen time short, they left a smudge of ash where they once stood. But did they deserve better? No. And that's not a they weren't good characters kind of no. That's a the Phantoms filled the exact role they were made to fill and didn't need to be brought back beyond spin-offs kind of no. And they did have some neat spin-off cameos, and would have made for some cool skins if Fnaf AR would have lasted longer. But realistically, they are so entwined with this location and this game that there's where their story importance should lie. They were the ghosts of Freddy's foreshadowing a fearsome fire that was started to consume Fazbear's biggest fright but failed due to unfortunate circumstances, and the possibility of Springtrap's suit being lined with asbestos. Unlike the nightmares whose entire image is changed by the concept of fear gas, the phantoms are what they are, hallucinations in the dark of animatronics whose remains are already hanging around in the building. They might be haunted, or maybe the only thing haunted is the person we're playing as, distracted by regrets while demented Bugs Bunny stalks the halls. They don't have a lot of presence, pun intended, if that even counts as a pun, but they did what they had to and moved on without a fuss. So that was the Phantom Animatronics. Possible hallucinations or also maybe spirits popping up in a building that was only supposed to look dilapidated but played its role a little too well, possibly under the influence of Springtrap, while what remained of who they were either laid in a box of forgotten parts or hung out in the hallway with a vacant look. For what they were, they did it well, and then faded away as quickly as Fazbear's fright did. Ashes to ashes. Thank you for watching.